Kirsty here from Kirsty TV, and my guest today, Paul Gelder, an Aussie who is in LA, thought that we would sit down and have a chat. So he has led quite the life, everything from starting out as a drug dealer and in strip clubs through to becoming part of the Navy SEAL Force. And when life was interrupted by a horrific shark attack that left him with some choices to make. So you talk a lot in your talks about making better choices. It obviously wasn't just that one incident that kind of defined that idea of you having to make better choices. There were a lot of things before that. So where do you think it started for you?
All the things that have eventuated through my life have been about making choices. And it started pretty early as well. I made a lot of bad choices. I chose to get involved with people that I probably shouldn't have, and I chose to continue that lifestyle, even though my parents frowned on it and ended up kicking me out of home as well. So choices are basically the one thing that has led my life into good and bad directions. So whenever I try and talk to people, I tell them about making positive choices, things that sometimes are scary, but I've found that the scary ones are usually the best choices to make because they get you outside of your comfort zone and they change your life for the better.
So, I mean, everyone's going to be sitting on the edge of their seats by now because they're like, well, we want to know about the shark attack. So we're out at dinner last night, and after you left the dinner table, I said to everyone, well, how do we beat that? I mean, nobody's got a story to tell at dinner after somebody's just told you about having their arm ripped off by a shark. So it was pretty boring after you left. So let's talk a little bit about that. So where did that sort of story begin for you?
It was just, we had one of the new guys in the water swimming for about half an hour because he's the new guy, and that's just how it works. But I decided to do a good turn and pulled him out of the water, and I said, I'll take over. And I rolled over the side of our little black inflatable that we call a Zod, short for Zodiac, in a 1mm wetsuit, a pair of fins on, and I was on my first lap, just kicking my legs. And I looked over my left shoulder to make sure I was going in the right direction, and before I could look back, I felt this huge whack in my leg. And I didn't think much of it. Like I said last night, it didn't hurt. So I casually looked down and just came face to face with this massive shark's head attached to me. And we looked at each other.
So it's bitten you. It's wrapped right around your entire leg.
Attached to me. And I didn't panic. I just sort of stared at it going, that's not supposed to be there. And then my instincts kicked in and I thought, okay, I've seen Shark Week. I've seen The Crocodile Hunter. I'll jab it in the eyeball. So I tried to use my right hand, but I couldn't move it. And I looked down and the shark had actually pinned it to my leg. So it had the back of my leg and my hand in its mouth. So I thought, okay, left hand. And I went to jab it in the eyeball with my left hand, but I couldn't reach. It had me by the back of the leg on an uncomfortable angle. So I tried to push it off by the nose, and that did nothing. My hand just slipped off it. So in a last-ditch attempt, I tried to punch it in the nose, like you hear on the TV shows. And
works sometimes.
That did nothing.
And this is all in seconds.
Yeah, this is in the blink of an eye. It's amazing how you can break it down into small segments, even though it was like that. So the punching in the nose didn't do anything, I think, except piss it off. And that's when it started shaking me, and that's when the pain kicked in. And it was the worst thing I've ever felt. It was excruciating to the point where I couldn't do anything. All I could feel was the pain. I couldn't think to fight back. I was just at this shark's mercy. And we went underwater, and then we popped to the surface, and I took a quick breath because I thought we'll probably go back down, and we did. And it just shook me like a rag doll. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't fight. I was just, totally at its mercy. And I thought, I'm going to die. This is the last day of my life. I'm dead. And it just kept shaking me, and all of a sudden I was free. And I don't know why, and I don't know how, and I popped to the surface, and I saw the safety boat in the distance, and I saw the shark's tail flick a big splash of water, and I just thought, I've got to get out of here, and I took my hand out of the water to take a stroke.
So he'd released you?
Well, I didn't know what he'd done at that point, but he'd actually ripped out my hamstring and ripped off my hand. My arm just finished at the end of my wetsuit. So I just went into panic stations, and I just started swimming one hand and one leg to get to the safety boat, and I thought I was going to die again.
So do you ever think sometimes that there were certain things that happened or in their, your life and journey that were almost pieces to the puzzle that had you not had them, you wouldn't be here today?
Very much so. The fitness, the intense fitness that I had, my medical training, all of those things came into play to keep me alive that day. And even after the attack and throughout the recovery, mentally and emotionally as well, having been through so much struggle in my earlier life, I guess made me a little more resilient than a person might normally be. So I realised that, things are bad now, but I've been in bad situations before, and we can get through this and we can make it better, but it's up to us.
A lot of people talk about having those moments of why me, and obviously you get through that. But what was your sort of initial feelings that first week in the hospital?
I didn't have a period of why me, and I didn't say it should be Lockie, and even though he felt that way, and I had to sit down with him and have a chat with him and say, this is okay. Don't worry about it. I'm glad it wasn't you, and I didn't want it to be me, but this is how the dice have played out. So what we're going to focus on is getting me better. And I want your help, and I want this guy's help, and I want Navy's help. And if I did need help, I asked for it.
Do you think, is there a part where it's really hard accepting that you have a disability?
Have who what?
But did you see it that way the first week? The first month, the first year?
I was really scared. I was really scared about how my life was going to play out. I had visions of being in wheelchairs and people staring and being on crutches and people having pity for me and me being sad. But that vision, those thoughts turned me off that. That was what made me choose, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to give in, and I'm not going to be this stereotypical disabled person that people feel sorry for. That's not who I am. That's not my life. So I chose not to have that. And I figured if people are going to look at me and they're going to stare, then instead of the pity, I want maybe the awe or the feeling proud for the things that I achieved. So I put in hard work. I put in hours and hours and weeks and months of hard work so that I could achieve just as much as anyone else.
So what's been the biggest frustration for you?
It's the smallest things. You think it's the big things, but it's the things that are small because they're supposed to be so easy, like opening a can, using a dustpan and broom, threading your buttons and trying to thread a needle and sew buttons and things like it's the small things that are infinitely frustrating.
Were you a patient person before this?
No, I don't like waiting. Well, I could always do things really quickly, and now it's like, okay, take a deep breath, because if you don't, you're going to throw something out of a window. So it's I found a cheaper way to do it. Just relaxing, patience and perseverance are key.
Well, now you're able to live such a full life and continue to be as active as you were in a lot of ways. So I've heard you talk a little bit about doing things for other people and how happy that makes you. When did that sort of, obviously as a drug dealer, that wasn't sort of, well, maybe
I was making people
you were,
joyous.
That's right.
I was only dealing weed, so.
So when did that sort of start to come into your life, and how have you seen how much joy it's brought into your life?
The first time was when my public speaking started, and I'd been asked to do public speaking before by corporations, and I kept saying no. Look, honestly, I'd rather defuse a bomb than public speak. But I was asked by Canteen, the cancer camp for kids, to talk at one of their camps, and how do you say no to kids with cancer? So I was like, sure, okay, I'll come along, and I was really scared. But I walked away from that with this sense of reward and fulfillment that I'd never had before. So when I have a bad day, I think about some of the other kids I've met since then, and I think, I don't have any problems. I deserve to be happy and positive and motivated, because there's people out there in the world with real problems, and maybe instead of feeling sorry for myself, I can try and help some of them.
So what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Get the hell out of Canberra.
What was ahead for him?
Yeah, there's some
trying times ahead, but you know, I'd say just try and be happy. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're eventually going to get there. I don't think I'd change a thing.
You think you're making better choices now?
Very much so. And even though it took some extremely hard days, it's made me who I am now, and I'm a pretty happy person.
You are. Well, high five.
High five.
That's how I like to end my interviews. High fives are a hug. So thank you so much for being here. I've had such an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you all day, but I don't know if they'd listen all day. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.